Yeah, boy. Yeah. You got you can give them opinions there, brother, so I can jot some stuff down. Got my
We'll start now.
Just give me a second. Hold on. I'll be back. Rashid on there. Listen now, you got some hot tips, brother? We'll talk about that later, inshallah.
Stock tips.
Yes, stock tips. Alright. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm here with my brother Abdul Wahhab.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Kayf halakum? How's everybody doing?
Okay, alhamdulillah. So basically the purpose of our little meeting today is that we want to do a small question and answer period. For a lot of times I'm online, I see questions that are asked a lot, repeatedly. A lot of times it's people just giving their opinions on something, nothing that has any kind of Islamic backing to it, or anything like that. So I figured it'll be beneficial to get somebody that has knowledge, alhamdulillah, like yourself,
inshallah,
to try to help guide some of us and all of us to a better understanding of these questions that we have on a regular basis. So how about we start off just by you just introducing yourself and letting us know, what your qualifications are to answer these questions.
Okay, bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, thumma amma ba'd. Your brother Abdul Wahhab Faulk. Just a little bit about myself, very little bit. I studied overseas for about 10 years. I studied a year in Kuwait, and I studied about 7 years in Saudi Arabia in Islamic University Medina. I graduated from the College of Sharia. And also after that, I did a little study in Morocco. And alhamdulillah. So I have a very little Islamic background, alhamdulillah. I did some study with Mashaykh outside of the university as well, from the major scholars in different parts of Saudi Arabia, and Riyadh, and also in Mecca, and so on and so forth. So, alhamdulillah, that's just a little bit about myself. Before we actually go into the actual question, you going to ask a question?
No, go ahead.
All right, so before we actually go into the questions, I do want to set down a preliminary. So there's 4 things I want to talk about. And that's basically فضل القول لا أدري, that the virtue of the statement, I don't know. لا أدري, right? I don't know. The reason why it's important because usually when people ask, they have a Q&A, sometimes it's a fitna for the person who's answering the questions, and the fitna for the person who's asking as well, that he feels that he's obligated to answer everything, right? And that's just not the case. And at least inshallah ta'ala, that's not going to be the case here. So I want to talk about the virtue of saying, I don't know. So there's 4 things. So just remind me, just in case I lose it. So one of it's going to be an ayah, all right? 2 of them are going to be hadith, and 1 of them is going to be an athar, right? And we'll explain the difference between a hadith and an athar later on. So let's actually start with the ayah, just to be totally correct, inshallah ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Isra, He says, لا تكفو ولا تكفو ما ليس لك به علم إن السمع والبصر والفؤاد كل أولئك كان عنه مسؤولا. He says, and don't follow what you have no sure knowledge of. Indeed, the hearing, all right, the sight, and the heart will all be called to account. So therefore, the scholars are saying they use that as a proof to say that if a person doesn't know, then he needs to say, I don't know. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So basically, that ayah is a proof that when a person, if he doesn't know, then it's not permissible for him to speak in matters that he's not aware of. So therefore, that's in regards to the ayah. And don't follow what you have no sure knowledge of. Also, we want to start with the athar. We said there's 2 hadith, is that, and then the athar. All right. So an athar is basically a statement or actions of one of either the companions or those who came after them. The reason why it's important is this particular author is important because when a scholar, one of the scholars of the past by the name of Hassan al-Basri, rahimahullah, when he was asked the question, he will always, and if he said I don't know, and the people will kind of press on and press on and press on and press on to answer this question, he would say, "La taj'al dhahri jasad jahannam." Don't make my back a bridge that's going to lead you to the hellfire. Meaning, don't force me to answer a question that I don't know. If I say I don't know, then khalas, I don't know. So therefore, the brother Abdul Wahhab, what do you think about this? If I mention I don't know, that's not from just me being humble. I don't know. All right. So again, as Hassan al-Basri said, "La taj'al dhahri jasad jahannam." Don't make my back be a bridge that will lead you to the hellfire. All right. And also, having said that, we said there's two hadith, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's two hadith. One hadith, everyone knows this. Everyone knows this hadith. If you've been Muslim, you've been studying for a while, you pretty much know this hadith. And this hadith is referring to the hadith of Jibril. The Prophet ﷺ was sitting with his companions, and we know that Jibril ﷺ came to him in the form of a man. And one of the questions that he asked him, he said, "Ya Rasulullah," or "Ya Muhammad," excuse me, "Ya Muhammad, akhbirni an as-sa'a." Tell me about the hour. And the Prophet ﷺ simply said, "I don't know, and you don't know." So therefore, again, the Prophet himself admitted that he didn't know something. There's another hadith that's even more clear than that. You have the hadith of Shaykh al-Albani, rahimahullah. He mentions in the collection of a book called Sifat al-Fatwa, and he mentioned, this is a beautiful hadith, and he says that a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and asked him, "Ya Rasulullah, ayy buldan ash-shar?" Qala la adri. The man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said, "O Messenger of Allah, which place on the face of the earth has the most evil in it?" And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "I don't know." He left it like that. So when Jibril ﷺ came to the Prophet ﷺ on another particular occasion, the Prophet ﷺ, he asked the same question to Jibril. And he said, "Ya Jibril, ayil buldan shar?" Which place on the face of the earth is the most evil? Qala Jibril la adri. Even Jibril said, "I don't know." Hatta as'al Rabbi azza wa jal. Until I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The point of this hadith that the scholars use, they say that, look, you have the best of mankind, had no shame, he said, "I don't know." And then you also have Jibril alayhi salam, the best of the malaika, he said what? La adri, I don't know. The whole reason why I want to use that as a preliminary before we start the Q&A is that, please, it's not from, despite that I've studied a little bit or whatever, but if I say I don't know, then khalas, I don't know. There's brothers that's way more knowledgeable than me. Or I might not know, so the Habib might know the answer, or one of you might know the answer, so feel free to chime in. But again, I just want to set that as preliminary before we start any Q&A. I know that's kind of long, but alhamdulillah.
Okay, so let's start off. You said you studied Sharia, so what exactly does that mean?
Alright, so basically I studied in Islamic University of Medina, and what you do basically, you study if you don't speak Arabic, you're going to study Arabic for 2 years. And then once you graduate that, you have the choice of going to 5 different colleges. It's either the College of Sharia, you have the College of Da'wah, you have the College of Lughat Arabiya, you have the College of Hadith, and you have the College of Usul al-Din, right? College of Quran, excuse me, College of Quran. So anyway, when it comes to Sharia, it's basically going to talk about fiqh, all aspects of fiqh. And fiqh basically, in a nutshell, all right, fiqh basically is worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon the clear proofs and evidence, or evidence that the scholars have extract, whether it be from the Quran and the Sunnah. As far as the as far as the Arabic language, Sharia has its own meaning, and as far as the way we use it in the Deen, the Sharia will basically be the legislation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in place. So I spent 4 to 5 years studying fiqh and usul fiqh. Yeah.
So, like you said, there's people who are going to have more knowledge than you, certain different topics, whatever. What do you feel are the topics of your strong points, like where you specialize?
Well, that which I feel most comfortable talking in is fiqh, obviously, aspects of aqidah, and fiqh hadith. But that doesn't mean I'm the most knowledgeable person when it comes to that. A prime example of this is when Musa was asked who's the most knowledgeable man on the earth, and he said me, and Allah showed him someone else that was more knowledgeable than him. The point is that as far as me, what I feel comfortable, again, I'm not saying I'm the most knowledgeable person in this area, but what I feel more comfortable is questions about fiqh. What is the opinions of the scholars about this, so on and so forth? What is the proof for this? And so on and so forth, and aqidah as well. And if you had to choose between the two, and it's just mujarrad nasiha, just advice. If anybody's going to study anything, then I would tell them, and this may sound contradictory because I study fiqh, but to focus on aqidah at the end of the day. Because aqidah is that which is going to save the person from the hellfire. Aqidah is the one that's going to help a person in his grave. And as one of my teachers used to say, what is the benefit of knowing the ahkam of wudu if you don't know that which can save your own soul? SubhanAllah. Alright? So we'll leave it like that, inshallah. Nah.
Okay. All right, so anybody that has any questions, anything, you feel free to just type them right there in the comment section, and inshallah we'll try to get to the questions as we go along. So don't feel shy. If you have something you want to ask, just type it on in there.
Can I mention something?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so when it comes to the aspect of fiqh, and I don't know if this question is going to come up, but a lot of people may ask, is, well, does that mean you study a particular madhab, right? Mm. Do you study this or do you study that? So in the University of Medina, the way we're taught, what's commonly known amongst the common Muslim is what? 4 different madhab, or what they refer to as schools of thought, right? Which is the Abu Hanifa, the Ahnaf. You have also the Shafi'i, you have the Hanabila, and you have Imam Malik. But in this particular school, in the University of Medina, we study more than that. You have the Zahiri, you have the Athari, you have this, you have that, and so on and so forth. So as far as me, do I follow a particular madhab? Then that's the answer will be slightly different. I specialize in studying various madhab, but also if I had to lean towards one, I'm more grounded in the Hanbali madhab. Right, the Hanbali madhab. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Imam Ahmad is always going to be right in these particular issues. In fact, Imam Shawkani, rahimahullah, he would suggest, and not talking about the layman Muslim, but someone who's interested in study, he will always say that it is obligatory upon every Muslim that their madhab is whatever Allah says and what the Prophet said. Because what happens is you find people who they say, I'm Hanafi, or I'm Hanbali, I'm this, that, and the third, and they will always lean to these particular scholars, and these scholars themselves have always mentioned, if you find something that goes against my statement, then throw my statement against the wall. So having said that, again, the person should never become what is known as muta'assib, a fiend for their particular madhab, and rather understand they're going to use that as a foundation, and that is fine. But so again, I'll follow basically what Imam Shawkani mentioned, and he said you have the verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Fassilu ahla dhikri in kuntum la ta'lamun." Ask the people of knowledge if you don't know. And of course, Imam Shawkani, he said that dhikr in this ayah, yuridu bihi dalil. It means dalil. Ask the people of proof about the proof if you don't know. Not just merely ask the people and they give you an answer, but always have proof in it. So also use that as another preliminary that any answer that I give, if I don't back it up with proof, then reject it, inshallah. Yeah.
Okay. All right, alhamdulillah. So we have a few questions that we already have that we can go ahead and start with these questions, inshallah.
Yeah.
And
go ahead, bro.
Okay, so the first question that we have here is about. This is talking about a couple that is separated, husband and wife, they no longer got divorced, whatever. And if the sister remarries, is there an obligation for the children to now go with the father? Or are there certain circumstances to where the kids are allowed to stay with the mother?
Okay, so when it comes to that, these issues are not necessarily as black and white as a lot of people may think they are. And unfortunately, a lot of people may quote one hadith, or they may quote this, that, and the third. They'll say, well, this is what's supposed to be done, not understanding all the intricate details that go behind that. And we're going to take it step by step. So the first thing is we know that even before we actually get to the issue of divorce, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? فَإِمْسَاكٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَتَصْرِيحُ بِإِحْسَانٍ. That either you're going to remain in kindness or you're going to separate what? Kindness. Right? So having said that, that is the foundation that we build off of, that you're going to separate in kindness. And this actually, what I'm referring to is actually the steps that Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, that he talks about. And I think this is pretty interesting. So now the question is, now you have two. Can I use these cups as an example?
Yeah, you can use it. Is the half cup the brother or the sister?
The brother, because he's divorced now, right? And so I don't know. His feelings is hurt, right? So anyway, so now you have brother Fulan and you have sister whoever her name is. They both separate. Sister Faulk. They both separate, and they have children involved. So now what happens here? The asl. When we say the asl, the foundation of this child right here is that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, "Anti ahaq bihi ma lam tanqihi." That you, meaning to the woman, that you have more right to this child so long as you do not get remarried. There's a few different things about that particular hadith, though, because some people just take that hadith and they go, they just run with it. One of the things that they run with, they say that, well, this hadith is oppressive towards women, and they'll say that because they say, well, this kind of forces the woman to never ever get remarried, because it's mafhum mukhalafa or muwafaqa, that basically if she does get remarried, then that indicates that she has to do what?
Give up the child.
Give up the child. But that doesn't necessarily, in some cases yes, but in some cases no. So let's actually take a step back. The first step when it comes down to the separation of the children is you have to take into consideration the age of the child. The age of the child. If the child is not of a certain age, as some of the scholars have mentioned, if the child reaches what is known as tamyiz, the age of discernment, they're able to decipher which way they want to go. Some scholars have said this is the age of 8, right? And you have this in a hadith, in another hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ khayyar al-walad, that he actually allowed the boy to choose. All right, did he want to go with the mother, or did he want to remain with the father, or what have you? Right. So you have that. So therefore, you have the first step is the consideration of the age of the child. All right, but let's say the child has not reached actually the age of tamyiz. All right, the age where he or she's able to decide which way they want to go. Scholars mentioned, they said, well, we go back to the asl, which is the foundation, that the woman has more right to this child so long as she does not get remarried. Now, Ibn al-Qayyim, he says, our deen, if is built off, but is basically that which is in the best interest of the people, right? And this actually comes underneath the science, what is known as maqasid al-sharia. All right, so let's say, for an example, again, brother A and brother or sister B. All right, and I don't mean any disrespect to anybody. I don't want anybody to say it, but let's say the sister is just basically out of pocket, right? She's an unfit mother, and so on and so forth. But then someone says, but look, the hadith says what? That she has more right to this child so long as she doesn't get married. Yeah. So therefore the child automatically has to go with who? The mother. And we say that this goes against the maqsad of the sharia, the maqasid of the sharia, the intention of the sharia, which is to what? To preserve or what's in the best interest of this child.
But if we living here in America, or maybe in some other place too, like, who's really going to be the person making that determination whether or not she's out of pocket?
So we're going to get him? No.
The ex?
Nah, right? So let me finish. Let me put it back, right? So basically, right? So basically, I know it's a long answer, but I'm trying to get everybody to understand exactly what's actually going on here. So you have that. The last thing I mentioned is that if the mother's an unfit mother, then the child will go to the father at this particular point, because he's going to raise the children up in a better household, and so on and so forth. Now again, this is when you have other people outside of this particular scene, not just the mother and the father, who's going to help determine that. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, hakaman min ahli wa hakaman min ahliha, somebody from his family and somebody from her family, right, and so on and so forth, basically to determine what's in the best interest of this particular child. Long story short, the reason why, and I want to mention this too, this is important, the reason why some scholars have mentioned that the mother should return the child to the father if she gets married, and again, this is not an attack on all women, right? But also, you have some women out there, again, I'm not saying that you have some women where they may get into another relationship and subject the child to harm, solely because she does not want to return the child back to the father. You may have a stepfather who's abusive to this child, who may, and just be candid, they may abuse the child sexually or physically or emotionally, right? Because he doesn't like this child, he doesn't want to raise this child. So, and I'm not saying all stepfathers are like that, but what happens is to remove that child from that harm. That is the intention behind it. That you have more right to the child, because generally the mother is going to be more nurturing towards the child. But if she's going to subject the child to harm, right, then she needs to do what? To return that child. But let's say in certain cases the father has apostated, right? Father has apostated. He doesn't pray anymore. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do a lot of different things. He's out of pocket. She's not. So she does get remarried. Does that mean, does the hadith mean that she still has to return the child back to him? La. So this is why Ibn al-Qayyim, he says, when we study or when we read certain texts, we need to understand it with the eyesight that what is in the best interest of this child. All right. So therefore, again, when you talk about ahkam, when you talk about rulings, people should not just say, well, this is the hadith, this is black and white, the brother has to do this, this has to do this. A lot of these situations either are solely for this particular circumstance, and I'll use another hadith as an example. I don't mean to digress a lot, but I'll use another hadith as an example. You have the hadith of Hind, the wife of Abu Sufyan. Right, Abu Sufyan. She came to the Prophet ﷺ. She said, "O Messenger of Allah, inna Abu Sufyan rajul shahid." Right, Abu Sufyan, he's a stingy man, and I take from him what he don't know about. For me, that's what's sufficient for me. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "What? I take from him what's sufficient for you and also your child." So it's not mentioned that this was specifically, excuse me, for Hind, not for every woman. So it's not for every woman to go around like, yo, man, it's you out of pocket. I'm going so that, you know what I mean, take that credit card this week, right? So you can't do that. So having said that, again, this is for that particular circumstance. So again, in a nutshell, when it comes to children, the asl is what? The first step is to do that, to separate in kindness, to do that which is in the best interest of the child. And generally speaking, the reason why the Prophet ﷺ said that you have more right to the child so long as you get married is because the asl, the origin, that the mother is going to be what, more sympathetic, empathetic to the child and take care of the child and nurture the child. But then you have other hadith that you have to what, take in consideration. There's another narration where the Prophet ﷺ, he gave the child a choice as to what parent he or she want to go to. So you have those particular circumstances. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he says that when a child he reaches the age of 7, then therefore he's able to determine as to what parent he wants to go. Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentioned something interesting. He says even at that particular age, it's best that have other people within the family to help the parents to come to a decision. Because a 7-year-old child today is going to think about what? Abby, he has PlayStation, he has this, he has that, but not considering the fact that what? My father isn't praying. And so on and so forth. So all those particular things need to be taken into consideration.
Okay. Was there anything else you wanted to mention on that topic? Or you good? Okay.
No.
All right. So let me ask this. So another question is, let me see here. Once again, if anybody here has a question, feel free to chime in on it. So, what should someone do about, if you're Muslim, but you have a parent who is not Muslim, but they're like emotionally abusive to you, or mentally, you go around, they saying, why you wearing, this, you got a rag on your head, you're terrorist, you got a big old beard, you know what I'm saying? This is your mother, this is your father, you know what I'm saying? Or, to the point where you don't even feel comfortable going, but yet you're still trying to keep that family ties. What's the recommendation on that?
The recommendation is to be patient. As cliche as that may actually sound, that's what you're supposed to do. If you go into consideration, if you look into Surah Al-Luqman, chapter 31 of the Quran, Luqman, he gives his son 10 pieces of advice. Now, this part of the advice is not from Luqman, it's not from the 10, but if you start off with Luqman, he tells his son, do not commit shirk. Right after that, Allah talks about the rights of the parents. All right. Well, we'll say that in San because if we have ordered mankind to be good to his parents because his mother bore him in birth, hardship upon hardship, right? And then Allah throws a caveat in there. He says the only time you're allowed to disobey your parents is if they try to get you to commit what? Shirk. right? But other than that, Allah says, وَصَاحِبَهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. Other than that, you are to be a good companion to these parents. So again, if it was a situation where a person was allowed to be disrespectful towards his parents,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it will be hard to give da'wah to these type of. Excuse me. So if you look at the sirah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you're not the first person to have non-Muslim parents.
Mm-hmm.
Look at how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam also ordered the children to be respectful to their parents, despite torturing them, despite trying to get them to commit kufr, despite them doing all different types of things. One hadith that comes to mind is that the daughter of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, right? He has several daughters, but the daughter of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, her mother was a kafirah.
Mm-hmm.
Her mother was an Muslim. Abu Bakr had more than one wife, unbeknownst to a lot of people. What happens is when they were in Medina, on one occasion, the mother, she wanted to try to visit the daughter, right, in Medina. And she was concerned that this woman, we're in the land of the Muslims now, right? This is the first Muslim city, state, if you will. And we have this non-Muslim woman that wanted to come visit me. So she went to the Prophet ﷺ to inquire about this. Is it okay? And the Prophet ﷺ ordered her to treat this your mother, to treat her nicely. So on and so, despite he didn't mention, well, she's a kafirah, this is the first Muslim state, so on and so forth, and whatever. The whole point is that if a person has non-Muslim parents who are disrespectful to their deen, these people are the first people that you should try your best to be the most patient with, more than anybody. Because at the end of the day, whatever they're doing doesn't negate what they have done for you, giving birth to you, raising you, and so on and so forth. And in fact, by you being patient upon the harm, then perhaps it may lead them to the truth. If you go to the story of the Prophet ﷺ when he was in Taif, and he was being stoned by the people, and the angel of the mountain came and said, what? That I can use these two mountains and crush them. And what did the Prophet ﷺ mention? That no, perhaps their children might become Muslim. And if you study the seerah, you'll find, and the names escape me, but you'll find that a lot of these children also end up becoming major Sahabi. So imagine if the Prophet ﷺ decided to do what? Let's just crush them.
Mm-hmm.
Then what will happen to the Ummah today? The whole point is that, and also you have another verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, don't even say uff to them. Right? So again, I understand that it can be strenuous. It can be very upsetting in certain areas. But at the end of the day, Allah guides whom He wills, and it behooves the person for them to be patient.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the advice was to be patient, but then you followed up with some other stuff for the person's parents or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming the advice would be to be patient as well. What about on the flip side, when you have somebody who is Muslim but their children who they've raised to be Muslim and whatnot seem to be getting into the adolescence years and whatnot, and they starting to go this way and go that way, and I don't know, sometimes people may start doubting like their own parenting as far as I raised this person and now look what they're doing, they're this, they're that, and what would be the advice on something like that?
أنت خير من النور. And what I mean by that, what I said was, are you better than Nuh alayhi salam? And the reason why I said that is because as a parent, I'm a parent, you're a parent, and we love our children. And we don't want our children to go a certain way, right? And just remind me to go back to that, talking about the non-Muslim parent, right? But the reason why I use Nuh as an example is because Nuh was a prophet, right? There was no one better than Nuh at that particular time. Yet even his own household was falling apart. So sometimes it's not a shot at the parent themselves. Maybe they did everything they could possibly do. I have tried to teach my daughter. I've tried to teach my son. I put them in Islamic school. I taught them as much as I could teach them. We used to go to the masjid together. We did out. But he's addicted to drugs now. He's doing this. He's deviated. He became an atheist. He does this. He does this. Certain things is just clearly a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's nothing you can do about it. So for an example, the reason why I use Nuh alayhi salam, because if you go to Surah Al-Safat, Nuh says to his son, Ya bunayya irka ma'ana wa takun ma'a kafirin. It says, get on the boat and ride with us and don't be with the disbelieving people. So, an example, how we tell our children, don't be around these people, don't be on that block, don't do this, don't do that, so on and so forth, don't go around there, you stay away from these jokers, right? And a lot of times, the children will respond to us in a way that Nuh's son responded to him. Sa'awi ila jabalin ya'sumuni min al-ma'. That I'm going to seek refuge in this mountain that's going to protect me. Or how we would say to our parents, come on, ma, you know what you're talking about. I'm going to be all right. Times is different. It's not like how when you was younger, and so on and so forth, right? We all probably said this ourselves. We have heard other people say that. The reason why I want to use Nuh as an example is because, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Ashaddu nas bala'an al-anbiya, thumma amthal fa-amthal." That the people who have the hardest of tests are the prophets, and those who are like them, and those who are like them. Right? So if you are struggling in that area, know for sure that perhaps you are actually doing something that you're supposed to do, right? But you're going to be tested. Now, also having said that, Nuh alayhi salam, after that, and this is where it gets deep in this particular ayah, all right? وَحَالَ بَيْنَهُمَا الْمَوْجِ فَكَانَ مِنَ الْمُغْرَقِينَ. And immediately he saw a wave wipe his son out. And that also obviously is found in other verses that you can see that Nuh alayhi salam, he was clearly hurt. To see his son be destroyed like that. And to see our own children to go different ways, to become addicted to drugs, become addicted to alcohol. They're not praying no more. They're on the street. They left Islam. They're not wearing hijab anymore. They're not doing those particular things. But sometimes it doesn't mean you failed as a parent. In some cases, perhaps. I'm not going to be real. Some cases, perhaps you did fail. But in certain cases, if you honestly have done everything you could possibly do, right? But it doesn't mean that you're a bad parent, unfit parent. It doesn't mean that you failed. You're being tested. Now, also, as a nasiha, as advice to those who have non-Muslim parents, and you converted, and I want you to understand this, let me explain. Just as you will be hurt if one of your children left the path that you taught them, you have to understand, even though we know that they're not upon truth, right, and we have the truth, you still have to understand that your parents are hurt, that you turned away from the path that they put you on. And it took me personally, I have non-Muslim parents, right? My mother's a minister actually, and it took me a long time for me, well, I accepted Islam at a young age, at 13, but it took me a long time for me to understand that even though I know what I'm doing is right, but she's still hurt. So she's still going to respond in an angry way and so on and so forth. Just like if one of my children were to deviate, I will respond in an angry way, because you're going against the grain what I taught you. So a person has to be cognizant of that and not always, my mom is shaitan, my mom is this, that, third. No, he's just angry. That's all it is. So make dua, and then that brings me to one story that I remember. Abu Hurairah. Abu Hurairah, and a lot of people don't know that Abu Hurairah, his actual name, right? Right? Do you know Abu Hurairah's real name?
Abu Hurairah.
Abu Hurairah, his name before Islam was, and the scholars differ about it, but one of the names that they say is Abdul Shams. For anybody who knows the Arabic language, Abdul Shams means what? The servant of the sun. All right, of the sun. So the Prophet says that he changed his name. He changed his name to Abdurrahman. Which also bring me another side point. We'll get to that later. Do you have to change your name after you take Shahada and so on and so forth? We'll get to that. But the point is that Abu Hurairah's mother, she hated Islam. She hated Islam. And she would say certain things about the Prophet. So Abu Hurairah, he went to the Prophet and said, Ya Rasulullah, my mother says things about you that I don't even want to tell you. You should be going in, right? Well, it's not like I didn't say go in, but you know what I mean. Like, she says certain things that I don't even want to tell you. And the Prophet, and basically Abu Hurairah, he said, "Oh Messenger of Allah, please make dua for my mother." Fada'a li Abi Hurairah. So he made dua for the mother of Abu Hurairah. When Abu Hurairah went back to his house, he found his mother actually making ghusl. He knocked, and she said, "Don't come in yet." And when she came out, she said, "Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah." So she actually took her shahada. The whole point is this was the patience of Abu Hurairah. But he had a mother who not only used to abuse him verbally, but also abused the Prophet, and that hurted him more than it would hurt one of us. Because obviously this is the Prophet, and not only the Prophet is in front of him, this is his friend. Yeah. You know what I mean? So having said that, again, people have to be cognizant of that. Now,
you said you wanted, was this the point that you wanted to make about The non-Muslim parent?
Yeah, about
Okay.
it, you going against the grain. Yeah.
Okay. All right, let me ask you this. Someone asked about meditation. Like, is there any, like, okay, we understand that we make dua, we want something, you know what I'm saying, and there can be some benefit from it or whatever, but what about meditation? Like, not actually saying dua or whatever, but is there any, would you say, Islamic perspective or angle from somebody saying, okay, I'm going to go sit here and I'm going to, I guess, get in touch with my inner self. I'm going to go sit in this room for a half an hour and, focus on me, or it's going to be between me and my Lord, or, whatever. Is there something, okay with that, not okay with that? You know what I'm saying?
So I think a person has to define what meditation actually is, right? Because it could be a lot of different things. I can give an answer, and somebody may say, well, no, that's not what I meant by meditating, right? So somebody may say, well, just sitting down and like in a yoga position or something like that. Somebody may say, no, meditating for them is just being at home by themselves. So Allah knows best. We know that before the risala or the nubuwwah of the Prophet ﷺ, that he loved what is known as khalwa. He loved to actually be alone. He would seclude himself, right? And we know in the mountain that was known today as Jabal Nur, or the cave of Hira, right? So he would go there, and this is when Jibreel said, we all know the story. The question now becomes, well, after he became the prophet, would he constantly also seclude himself from the people, right? Would he also keep doing these particular actions? So I would say the first step, I'm not going to give an answer, and the reason why is because there's a principle in Islam that is hukm ala shay faru an tasawwurihi, which basically means the ruling upon something is contingent upon how much the person who's giving the answer understands the issue. So if I don't understand what everybody intends and I give an answer, I can cause more harm than good. So having said that, again, I think everybody we have to come with a definition of what meditation is. Because a person can say, well, I'm meditating. Just like, for an example, I've heard somebody say this before, and I don't want to misquote them, but in lieu of praying, they will meditate to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they were like, well, look, the Prophet used to meditate. That's okay, I think, but that's before he became the Prophet, before he prayed. And now you have other hadith where the Prophet said what? That the coolness of his eye is what? The salah. So I think that, if a person wants to just unwind, if that's their version of meditating, or whatever, then we have to actually reach a definition of what meditating is before you actually give the answer to that.
Okay. You had mentioned something about whether or not someone needs to change their name when they accept Islam.
Right. So, for an example, it's not obligatory, and I know especially in the African American community, right? As soon as somebody takes shahada, mashallah, brothers, alaikum, no Muslim, you better than me, boom, boom, your name is Rahman now, right? So, right, everybody goes to that phase, and unfortunately, it's unfortunate.
I used to trip out when I met somebody named like Brother George, or Brother Steve. I'd be like, huh? Like,
It was to
weird
the point where you be like, astaghfirullah. I mean, like he did some haram or something like that, right? But that's just the ignorance of some of the people, and I was from them. But the point is that when you actually study it, though, there's no proof that you can actually bring to say it's obligatory that you have to change your name after you take shahada, right? And there's pros and cons to everything. I understand why some people do it. Some people have let it pass where they want a totally identity change. They don't want to be known as Michael anymore. I want to be known as Mikael, right? Because it's a fresh start for me, right? So I get the concept. But again, to say that it's obligatory, the only time it is obligatory is if you have a name that's clearly haram, right? Lucifer. Or some people, unfortunately, they name their kids after liquor. Alizé, this, that, so on and so forth, right? So, having said, I've heard it before. So, but what I'm saying is that, like Abu Hurairah, his name was Abdul Shams.
Yeah.
You can't be a Muslim and your name is Abdul Shams.
Yeah.
Right? Or it's even in the African American community, especially I'm from New York. I grew up in New York, right? So, what happened is, and people from North, from Philly on up, they know that, especially in the African American community, you had a lot of people who was 5%ers. So they be names be like, yo, my name is Supreme Allah, this, that, and the third. Like, fam, what are you talking about? And they'll say, well, Allah means arm, leg, arm, head. So that I'm Allah, all that other stupidness. So if your name, and then you all of a sudden you have, you know what I mean, that you want to become a Muslim, you can't be in a masjid talking about, hey, Sadiq, what's your name, man? Supreme Allah, you might get beat up or something like that. You know what I mean? But you can't do that. But the whole point is that if your name is something haram, that's clearly haram, like Abu Hurairah, his name was Abdul Shams, then you have to change your name. Other than that, you don't. So a benefit of that, actually not changing your name and keeping that, perhaps it may help. And I heard somebody mention this too. It may help change certain narratives in the country that you live in. Like, for example, let's say a person's name is Jason, right? And he takes Shahada, and he wants to be known as Jason. I'm still Jason. And then everybody in the neighborhood knows that, mashallah, his family's Muslim. Well, what's his name? It's Jason. They got Muslims named Jason. So on and so forth. And his co-workers knows him as this, and so on and so forth. So, you know, it could be a dawah thing too, where if they enter it, I got to change my name, I got to do this, that, and the third. Like, for example, I was the senior Muslim chaplain in the South Carolina Department of Corrections, and I remember one of the excuses that a lot of people would make was like, yo, I believe it's the truth, man, but I don't want to change my name, man. My mom, you know, she named it. I'm like, I think you don't have to change your name. What? The brothers said I had to. Well, the brothers say a lot of things, but it doesn't mean you know, you don't have to. Anyway, so no, it's not obligatory. You have to change your name if your name doesn't have a meaningless harm behind it.
Cool. All right, let me ask you some questions dealing with a lot of stuff that I see online is like craziness going back and forth between like brothers and sisters having to do with relationships and marriages and so on and so forth. I don't know if there's I don't think there's really like a halal haram aspect to this, but one thing that we see a lot of times is that what a sister or what a brother would associate with a sister as far as a mahar. Sometimes people feel like, okay, this is a price tag you're putting on a sister, or, you know, this is what the sister's value is. So if you can kind of speak to that, because, you know, some sisters say, well, you know, I need 10 stacks. Or brother, or sister say, well, I need 5 stacks. And brother will be like, well, you got 3 kids, so, you know, you can get 1,500. You know what I'm saying? So, and it's like this back and forth thing, and it's like, well, I don't want to lower my standards. You know what I'm saying? I shouldn't have to lower my standards. The brother saying, oh, well, you asking for too much, and, you know, back in the day, you know, the Sahaba didn't pay out like that, and, you know, on and on and on.
I do you one better, right?
Yeah, you want the pious brother, but you asking for this ridiculous.
I got you. I do you one better, right? You got some brothers that basically say like, yo, you could relinquish your rights. You know what I mean? You don't have to take a dowry. And I want to start there, right?
Okay, let's start there.
So does the sister have?
Hold on, before you start there, because let's get before you even married. Yes or no? No matter how many times sister been married, not married, how old she is, she got kids, don't have kids, she has to have a representative to get married. Yes or no?
Yes.
Mahram, wali, wakil, whatever you want to call it. She can't marry herself.
No, she can't.
This is clear.
That's clear. So okay. I'll step in. Let's start there. So where does the confusion actually start? A lot of people and some sisters who get mad at their wali or their wakil or whatever, they reach for the hadith that's in Abu Dawood, where they say, what the Prophet mentioned, أَثَيِّبْ أَحَقْ بِنَفْسِهَا مِنْ وَلِيِّهَا. That a woman has more right to herself than her wali when it comes to her marriage. But he said a thayyib, and a thayyib is a woman who was previously married. The meaning of that particular hadith in Abu Dawood, it doesn't mean that she has the right to zawj nafsaha, that she marries herself off. What it means is that she understands, she's cognizant of what she likes, as opposed to, for example, my daughter grows up, right? She's 10 years old now, and she grows up, and she never been with a man before, and all this other stuff, inshallah. So the whole point is that, well, all she sees is that this brother's attractive, but she don't know brothers got game, brothers got this, that, and the third. She hasn't been exposed to that, so therefore I will have more of a say so in this particular area. But a woman who's been married before, this is the meaning of what the Prophet meant. That a thayyib, a woman who's been married before, has more right to herself than wali. She know what she like. You know what I mean? She know what she wanted a man. Right? She knows more than what her wali knows. So that's the understanding of it. Not that she has more right to herself, where she can marry herself off and disregard her wali. Now, we'll get into the issues of wali and all this other stuff, but the whole point is, is I want to go back to the question,
The mahar.
the mahar. All right, so so basically, a sister is obligated to have a mahar. There's no case where that she can just totally relinquish her rights and having a mahar. She is to receive something. So where did I get this from? Anything I teach you have to have a proof for it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran, وَآتُوا صَدَقَاتِهِنَّ نِحْلًا, and give them their dowries in Surah An-Nisa. So the scholars, they mention that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is an amr min Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so it is to be implemented. That even the lowest thing, or not the lowest thing, excuse me, or that which is commonly known amongst the people, she has to receive something. Not that it's just, your sister, you don't have to receive anything. So, or you know what, I'm gonna be taking care of you anyway, right? As what some brothers do. So don't worry about the dowry right now. Yeah, that's not a part of the deen. In fact, you actually found other hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he asked some of the companions, a woman who came to marry herself off to the Prophet ﷺ, and he mentioned that basically he didn't want to marry her. And the Prophet ﷺ asked the companions who want to marry this woman. And the Prophet ﷺ, he basically asked one particular companion, وَلَوْ خَاتِمٍ الْحَدِيدِ, that you don't have not even a iron ring to give her. Mention no. And he married her off that which he knew from the Quran, which brings me to my second point. Some of the scholars of Islam, they mention is that this situation was specifically for this man. Not necessarily that brothers can always give dowry, sister. MashaAllah, I remember just Amma, so I'm going to teach you just Amma. You know what I mean?
What's wrong with just Amma?
So I'm going to teach you just Amma, I'm going to teach you Surah Al-Baqarah. That's going to be your dowry, right? So some of the scholars mentioned that that was specifically for this particular individual, not necessarily everybody. So now that brings to my point. The proof is that she has to receive something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَآتُوا صَدَقَاتِهِنَّ نِحْلًا, that's to give the women a dowry. It's an amr min Allah, right? So, and I'll remind me to mention a story about Sheikh Uthaymeen in regards to that. So anyway, so she has to receive something. Now, what can she receive? Can it be a large amount? Can it be a small amount? This and a third? That's her prerogative, right? She can ask whatever she wants. If she wants $1 million for a mahar, she can ask for it. If she gonna get it, that's a different story. But she can ask whatever she wants.
Now, is it that she asks, or is the proper way that the brother offers something and she accepts or she declines?
Either way is fine.
Either way is
fine. Either is fine. And actually, some of the scholars mentioned is the haqq al-mar'a, is the right of the woman to mention that what she would like for her dowry. Not necessarily that the brother says, well, listen, I could do this and the third, choose one of the above. But she's not obligated to choose anything. I don't like none of those options. All right. So having said that, we talking about deen here, not brother's feelings. But that's what it is. So having said that, also you want to look at another verse in the Quran, in Surah An-Nisa as well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in رَبْتُمْ إِسْتِبْدَالَ الزَّوْجِ مَكَانَ الزَّوْجِ وَآتَيْتُمْ إِحْدَاهُنَّ قِنْطَارًا فَلَا تَأْخُذُوا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, and if you wish to replace one wife with another wife, you have given one of them qintar, which is basically a large amount of money, a large amount of something, right? And to not take it back from them. And how could you take it back when you have enjoyed relations with them and so on and so forth? So what happens, this was a pretty interesting time when Umar Khattab was Khalifa. He actually wanted to restrict the women to a particular amount as a mahar. That, listen, because the men were coming saying that it's too hard for us to get married. Can you restrict it? And Omar, he wanted to restrict it. But then the women complained. They used this verse as a proof that, why, Omar, you're wrong. You can't do that. Who are you to restrict it when Allah says that we can have this large amount? So having said that, again, a woman can ask for anything she pleases. Is she going to get it? That's one thing. Allah knows best. If she wished to make it easier, now also the Prophet ﷺ, he married for obviously that which is less than that. But the mere fact is that the ayat is clear, it's there, that if she was received this large amount, then you cannot take anything from it unjustly. So again, if a sister asks for 5,000, 10,000, I personally suggest to sisters, right, that, and I don't mean any disrespect, this is who already done it, but don't ask stuff like, I just want Sahih Bukhari, right? I just want this, that, and the third. I just want to a bias, right? Because he's your husband. He has to provide these things anyway.
Buys are expensive nowadays, man.
MashaAllah. But the point is, and he's just being real though. The point is that it's the obligation upon the man to what? To feed his wife, to clothe his wife, and so on and so forth. So this is just mere advice. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam.
Okay, so is there anything wrong with this practice of, okay, I want 10,000 for the mahr. Give me 1,000 now, and I'm gonna hold off on the 9. 2-3 years later, you want a divorce? Okay, now I want my 9. Because I mean, this is practice in some communities where I want this extravagant amount, like you said, but I'm only asking for this right now, and the rest is deferred. And you know, if we're together for 50 years and you die, halas, don't worry about it. But 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, we decide to get a divorce. Yeah, I need the rest of that.
All right, so
it's kind of like a breakup ransom.
I got you. So,
bruh,
play it.
Speak on it.
All right, so actually, the scholars differ in this regard. Let's give both sides of the argument.
Okay.
To be fair, you have that which is known as mahr muqaddam wa mahr muakhar. A mahr muqaddam is that a piece of the mahr that you give now, and then muakhar is basically that which you delay until a later point in time. For example, in the situation where, you know, as stipulated that, you know, if the marriage don't work out or whatever it is, not if the marriage doesn't work out, but 5 years, 10 years down the road, then I need the extra 5,000 or whatever. Some scholars mention that this is permissible. Where do they get this from? It's many different proofs, but one of the proofs that actually comes to mind is the same hadith that I quoted earlier, where the companion said that I know surah such and such and such and such, and I think, like, so let's say for example, Surah Al-Baqarah. This will take time to teach somebody this particular thing. It's not one of those things where you can just learn it overnight. So the scholars, they say that this is a clear proof that the marriage can take place, is valid, if a piece of the mahr was given and the rest of it was delayed. And they use this hadith as a proof to show, you see my point? That because it will take time to teach this particular person this particular thing, and it shows that a mahr can be spread out over a long period of time. So if a sister wishes to defend herself and to protect her rights or what have you, let's say she wants $10,000 for her.
But you understand the example I'm giving?
I got you.
Is that she never intends on getting that other part, only unless they separate.
I got you. Okay. So she makes the stipulation that, listen, I want 1,000 now, all right, or 5,000 now, and the rest later. If it doesn't work out, you know, I need that back. And if it does, you know, whatever the case may be. Some scholars, I'm just saying what some scholars said. I'm not a scholar. I'm just narrating what they said. Some of them mentioned that it's permissible. Some of them scholars mentioned that la hadihi bid'ah. This is bid'ah. That it was not done necessarily before, and this is a new practice, and this resembles the practices of the kuffar, and so on and so forth. Both arguments, different arguments can be made on both sides. But we can't say clearly that a woman is wrong. When we know that a majority of scholars have said that mahr muqaddam wa mu'akhkhar is permissible, right? But now she puts the condition that, well, if I get married, if I doesn't get married, or let's take it a step further. What about khula? When she got to give this back?
I was going there because some brothers say you asking for stuff that if that happened, you couldn't even repay it.
All right.
So basically, you taking the gamble. You want me to give you this, and you ask for khula. We both know that there's no possible way that you will be able to give that same amount back in return.
So even, all right, so now let's go to the khula, right? So if you take the consideration of what is a khula, it's basically when a woman ransoms herself from the marriage, which, I mean, that's going to take a whole other class, really. But the main differences between a talaq and khula is talaq biyad al-rajul. Talaq is from the rights of the husband, right? Again, brother A, sister B, right? Leave me alone.
Keep messing with my cup, man.
So he divorces his wife, which the way to divorce is to pronounce talaq one time, not 3 times in one sitting, as a lot of people do. So he pronounces divorce upon, but it has to be at a time they did not have sex yet, and so on and so forth. So he divorces her, and this starts the process of the 3 months, the 3 menstrual cycles, right? So then now he, you know, realizes, oh man, I messed up, I miss her, yada yada yada, boom, 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 right? So he says, I want her back. He takes her back. He could take her back, right? Now listen, we want to get back together. It's over. That counts as one divorce. But now let's say she's like, yo, I don't want to be in this marriage, right? I want to khula. A lot of people don't know that, again, the talaq has to happen at a certain time, before they had sex, before this, and yada, 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 right? But a khula, a woman can ask for a khula at any time. And actually, this is in protection of the woman. Whereas a talaq, you have to wait 3 menstrual cycles. A khula, you have to wait 1. And this is to help the woman remove herself from oppression. So, having said that, if she says, let's say the dowry was 10 grand, 20 grand, whatever it is, right? And let's say it was 5 grand. And she wants out of the marriage. So she says, man, look, all I got is 2 grand. She can give that, and if he accepts it, khalas, it's actually less than what she gave, and she can also be released from the marriage. So there's a lot of different things. That's going to take a long time to actually go over the ahkam of talaq, and hopefully we'll do another part 2 if the brothers and sisters are interested. Tomorrow we can actually talk about marriage and divorce and so on and so forth. Now,
It's charging?
yeah.
Okay. Alright, so good. You talked for 15 minutes, you stopped my got my apple in my mouth. Alhamdulillah, that's fine.
He didn't even offer me an apple, so I'm not.
I asked you
But
about
honoring your guest, subhanAllah.
You got that water there.
Mashallah.
What about being grateful for what you got? You know? They teach you that part, did they? Now, let's talk about, this may be a matter of opinion or whatever, with the, I guess if you want to call it courting nowadays. But we know, there's no dating or whatnot. So you got a lot of people, they'll meet, like in these groups or whatnot on Facebook. Some people say it's haram, some people say it's okay. Some people say, okay, well, I'm going to meet somebody, like I don't want to send every single person that I meet to meet my wakil or my wali or whatever. So, I'm gonna vet this brother for a month or whatever. And then if he seems like what I'm looking for, then okay, now we go to the next step, or so on and so forth. Is there a problem with this?
Yeah. The problem is that while you vetting, Shaitan is vetting you. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta be aware of that. We think that we are control over our desires and this, that, and the third, and I'm not gonna say this, and I know myself, and yada yada yada. The best of people fell victim to that. To fell victim to it. Put yourself in Yusuf alayhi salam's shoes. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions he enticed towards her, she enticed towards him. Had he not saw the Burhan of his Lord and some of the stars mentioned, he would have fell into it. Having said that, we're talking about Yusuf alayhi salam. None of us are stronger than Yusuf. I said to say that, you don't know what situation may hold. I'm going to be with the brother, we're just going to go to the movies, we're just going to third. Come on, we all human beings. We know the power of desires. We know shaitan, this and the third. So the whole point of the sharia is to not put yourself in a risky situation, right? So to avoid the whole thing. So anyway, the point of courtship, it is permissible to have a proper Islamic courtship. Let's say I use my daughter as an example. Let's say my daughter was old enough to get married, right? And she comes to me and she says, Abby, I'm interested in this guy at school, and he's handsome, this, that, and third, whatever, right? So, as men, as walis, as fathers, we have to understand that obviously our daughters will one day want to get married. It's just reality. So, to help them in that area, if they want to talk on the phone, then to be on the phone, freeway. I mean, there's a lot of they have WhatsApp groups today, this, that, and third. So you always want to be aware of what's going on, but also you got to be understanding that they're gonna want to talk in certain things, and obviously you're not gonna let them go so far. But there has to be, you have to give them room for them to get to know one another in the bounds of the Sharia. You shouldn't go out they shouldn't be going out by themselves. Oh, Daddy knows where I'm at. I have my I'm about to say Wahhab, smaller iPhone, iPhone, WhatsApp tracker, or whatever they use today. La, that's not sufficient. There always has to be a third party. It's physically there now.
Okay.
Because we all fell victim to that, right? You know, just being on the phone, subhanAllah, you know, I'm just getting to know the sister and this, that, and the third, getting to know the brother. And like they say, you start on Halal Street, you end up on Haram Boulevard, right?
What city is that in?
That's New York. That's New York. It's New York.
Okay.
No.
All right. Let's see what we got a thing here.
No, I don't think we got any questions, man.
Maybe I'm missing it out. I'm missing it, hitting it the wrong way. Okay. Let me ask something else too. Like when let me see here. When we a lot of times I see conversations where basically brothers and sisters are going back and forth about, you know, what are you going to bring to the table is basically the question. You know, you got a sister that's saying, well, you know, I just want to stay home and this and that. I don't want to go out and work. And this kind of goes back to what you were talking about, you know, with a sister who has kids from previous relationship. And brother's like, well, you know, you want me to take care of you and your children because you're refusing to send them back to their father. And not throwing shade, but most times a sister's gonna say, "Oh, well, their father's unfit, so that they have to stay with me."
All right.
So now the brother's like, "Okay, well, what are you doing? What are you going to bring to the table? Because it's not my Islamic obligation to take care of your children. You know, if I wanted to do it out of the goodness of my heart, okay, I could do that. Alhamdulillah. You know." And the sister, "Oh, what kind of Muslim is going to ask a sister to get rid of her kids?" You know, so he's like, "Well, we talking about the Sunnah here. You know, the Sunnah is X, Y, and Z." And if we talk about, you know,
I'm glad you mentioned what the Sunnah is, right?
Okay.
And the reason being because a lot of brothers are not aware of another part of the Sunnah.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of brothers, man, and I'm not throwing shade at anybody, anything like that.
Call it, brother, call it.
But but what I'm saying is, we act like it's haram for you to take care of these kids or something like that, right? We can get sadaqah, but we can't do that. But I don't want to take care of these kids. It's not my responsibility. The Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. You had the best example inside of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And unbeknownst to a lot of people, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself was a stepfather. All right, he had stepkids that he took care of, right? And in fact, one of the mother believers by the name of Salama, she didn't want to marry the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam solely because one, he had multiple wives, and she wasn't from the women who liked her husband to have more than one wife. And she told this to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And she had kids as well. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned, and I think she was a little bit older than him, if I'm not mistaken, or vice versa. I believe she was a little bit older than him. So what happens here in this particular narration, she says, Ya Rasulullah, that she didn't want to marry him because of the reasons that I mentioned. And he says something profound that I want brothers who have stepchildren to remember, right? One of the things that he says is, as for you getting older, I'm also getting older. And as for your jealousy, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove it. And he says, but this is the point that I want everybody to focus on. He says, Iyaluki iyali. Your family and your children are also mine. Having said that, again, he also took on the responsibility of taking care of this particular these particular children. It's his stepkids. Having said that, man, brothers got to get out of that. Oh, these are not my responsibility. No one forced you to marry the sister. If she wants to, if her situation calls for the kids to remain with her, you have made that conscious decision, right, to put yourself in that situation. Then sometimes it comes with the territory. But again, Islam, is it your obligation? No one's going to say that yes. You're not going to find a scholar to say yes. But is it haram for you to even take care of these kids? It's going to be even more so and praiseworthy for you in the day of resurrection, and it'll be it'll be good for you. It'll be khair for you, inshallah.
I think a lot of times it comes because people are talking about obligations. So you'll have the sister on one side saying, "Well, it's my right for you to take care of me. It's my right to not have to go out and earn a living. It's my right to, if I want to stay in the home, X, Y, and Z, whatever." But then the brother on the other hand saying, well, this is my right for this. So it's not, I wouldn't say so much of a situation where after the marriage, it's before the marriage, I guess the negotiating of what we're going to do.
See, it's pretty funny, man, that we always are like bullies with each other, right? It's my right, this not right, but very few of us give the rights of Allah his right, right? So we always worry about each other's right. We only worry about Allah's right. Anyway, having said that, again, as some of the scholars mentioned, it's from the nature of mankind. When they want something, they want everything, but when it's time for them to give, they want to what? Undercut. Like, for example, Allah mentions وَيْلٌ مُطَفِّفِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا اكْتَالُوا عَلَى النَّاسِ يَسْتَوْفُونَ إِذَا كَالُوهُمْ وَوَزَنُوهُم يُخْسِرُونَ. Right? When it's time for them to get theirs, they want everything. When it's time to give, they want undercut. So the whole point is, when it comes to the sisters or the brothers, when they say that, well, yes, it's her right that the brother takes care of her, and he can shoot one back. Yo, I don't have to take care of these kids. They're not necessarily mine. But then it goes to, oh, these kids, you married us, we a package deal, this, that, and that, and all this other stuff. Again, at the end of the day, a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said, Ya Rasulullah, indi dinar. He said, oh, Messenger of Allah, I got some money, I got a dinar. What should I do with it? The Prophet mentioned, anfiqhu ala nafsik. Spend it upon yourself, take care of yourself. He says, well, I got another one. He says, well, spend it upon your family. He said, I got another one. He said, well, then give it to your servant. He said, but I got another one.
This dude playing.
He said, I got another one. And at the point, the Prophet mentioned that you should know who to give it to. The Psalms mentioned that this is the maratib of sadaqah. This is the levels of sadaqah. That a person, first and foremost, need to take care of themselves. If they can't take care of themselves, they can't take care of anybody else. Right? The second step is his family and everything that's included in that. His children, his wife or wives, and the children that may come from that. And if he extends that to the stepchildren, then فَلَهُ خَيْرٌ, it's going to be good for him. It will never be bad for him. It will never be bad for him. Right? And then also, obviously, if he has, employers or whatever the case may be, employees, if you will, excuse me. And then at the end of the day. But the point is that, yes, a person can argue, well, this is my right, this, that, and the third, and so on and so forth. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do this. And everybody wants to play that, that game. And then now you get into, oh, brother got kids from Jahiliyyah. Do I have to take care of them? Yes. Take care of your kids, I think. Take care of your kids, man. If you get locked up or something. All right. So anyway, inshallah, man. But tomorrow we're gonna have like another a part 2 of this, right?
Inshallah, we can. That's fine.
Inshallah.
I'll ask you about some others. I saw a conversation one time. Somebody was basically, I don't know. To me, it seems like they were maybe like they were warning, I guess, sisters about, with the polygyny, saying, but you tell me that, like one of your study pieces or whatever is like inheritances or whatnot. They were basically saying that, like, if you a second wife or whatever, like you have to like really look like, if you have a daughter with this brother, like if he passed, like she's almost going to get nothing.
That is not necessarily
because when you look at the percentage of the inheritance and you split it, like when it comes down to, like, these kids, like they're gonna be,
that's not
like in the poorhouse, or they're gonna be the orphans. Can I have some more soup?
All right, so very quickly,
and I know inheritance is like a big deep.
Yeah, the deep. But I'll give you, you know what I mean, the cheat sheet. So basically, one, it doesn't matter how many wives the brothers have. All right, all those wives are going to share in the same inheritance. Those wives have nothing to do with those children. Right, and this is also why the children's portions are more than any spouse, whether it be male, whether it be women, and so, or whether it be the wife or the husband, because the blood relation is a lot stronger than marital relations. A man can end his marriage tomorrow, a woman can end her marriage tomorrow, but these kids will always remain their kids, right? So this is why their portions are different or larger, whether it be his first wife, second wife, third wife, or fourth wife, right? And even amongst the children, generally speaking, the son's portion, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, is going to be twice as much as the girls. And somebody may say, well, that's oppressive. Well, no, it's not necessarily true. Because we know that eventually this girl, inshallah ta'ala, is going to grow up, get married, some man is going to take care of her, and so on and so forth. And it's upon the boy's responsibility to take care of his sister, to take care of his wife, to take care of this, that, and the third. This is the wisdom behind it. Now can a person say, well, while I'm alive, I'm going to give my children this. I'm going to leave the house to my daughter. I'm going to leave the house to this, that, and the third. And somebody says, well, no, you're only supposed to leave this portion for them. No, the person has the right while they're alive. For example, a house, I would say, well, my son already is set up, this, that, and the third, he's going to be set up. No, this house is for fulana, you know what I mean? Because in case she gets divorced, she has a house to come home to. That is fine. The scholars of study mentioned the beauty of inheritance. This is pretty interesting. The beauty of inheritance is that because mankind is so greedy, as some of the scholars mentioned, that Allah, He left room for sadaqah, give however much you want. This, that, and the third, give however much you want. But inheritance, I know all of my creation, they're greedy when it comes to this. So He legislated, no, she gets a third, she gets this, he gets this, he gets this, he gets this. Because Allah is well aware of His creation. Now, but we can actually get into that a little bit. I'm going to take the peanuts for it.
Yeah, peanuts is granola.
Whatever it is. But the point is that is the wisdom behind inheritance. And as for brothers who have stepchildren, again, it's also, we ordered to follow the Prophet. The Prophet had stepkids, and he took care of his stepkids. Found me one hadith where the Prophet told him, son, but these ain't my kids. You know what I mean? And so on and so forth. Alright? So brothers gotta, brother, if you took on that responsibility, be a man. It is what it is. No.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So we appreciate you making the time today. We don't hold you up too much longer. That was it. I mean, unless there's something you want to say on the way out, and then inshallah we can see about maybe meeting up again.
Inshallah, hopefully we can meet up probably tomorrow. I think anyway, between 6 to 8. That's a 2-hour thing. You have some time to get it in. Inshallah. But also, again, if anybody has any questions, and if I say I don't know, it is what it is. Like I said, a person can't be ashamed of saying I don't know. The Prophet said I don't know. In certain cases, in the hadith I quoted earlier, Jibreel said I don't know. And as Allah mentions in the Quran, وَلَا تَكْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ, and do not follow what you have no knowledge of. You don't know. You don't know. So if somebody asks me and I say I don't know, don't hold that against me. I just don't know. And as Hassan al-Basri, was one of the scholars of the past, they said, لا تجعل ظهري جسر جهنم. Don't make my back a bridge for you to walk on to the hellfire. Don't force me to answer a question I don't know. If I don't know, just leave it like that. I don't know.
Alhamdulillah. All right, well, jazakallah khair. And we appreciate everything, and we'll get back at you guys tomorrow, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.